A lot of people have got the impression from this trial that Clubland, London, is very tough. Do you think it is? You run a couple of clubs.
Well, in all clubs you get an occasional drunk, you know, and sometimes have to be slung out, and that's why there's doormen and that, but,
Uncover the terrifying story of the Kray Brothers, the identical twins whose twisted reign over London's criminal underground shocked society. In today's gripping, bite-sized episode, we'll delve into the infamous legacy of Ronald and Reginald Kray, the malevolent siblings who terrorized London's East End for much of the 1960s. From horrible acts to unexpected celebrity ties, the Kray siblings' reign of terror is remembered as a shocking chapter in the history of British organized crime, and a story that you won't want to miss. Ronald and Reginald Kray were born on October 24, 1933 in the heart of East London to Charles David Kray and Violet Annie Lee. These identical twins were born 10 minutes apart, with Reggie leading the way. The Kray family were no strangers to adversity, having lost a baby daughter, Violet, and living with their father's erratic behavior due to his fondness for excessive drinking. The Kray brothers' early years were shaped by their mother, who wielded considerable power over their upbringing. Their father, Charles David Kray, had a nomadic life as a rag and bone man, often spending more time in pubs than at home. The twins started their schooling at Wood Close School before moving on to Daniel Street School. In 1938, the family relocated from Steen Street to 178 Valence Road in Bethnal Green, where the closeness of the mother and her sons was first noticed. During World War II, their father abandoned the British Army shortly after being enlisted and lived the next 15 years of his life on the run as a deserter. The twins, their mother, and their older brother Charles took sanctuary at Hadley, Suffolk. Dr. and Mrs. Styles' care at East House offered them a temporary reprieve from city life. The twins even had their first taste of the countryside, where they found peace and enjoyed activities like skiing. It was the Kray twins' maternal grandfather, Jimmy Cannonball Lee, who introduced them to amateur boxing, a favorite activity among East End working-class boys, and both twins excelled in the sport, with Ronnie standing out as the more aggressive fighter. Despite his low IQ, Ronnie was a voracious reader, particularly of stories about T.E. Lawrence, Ord Wingate, and Al Capone. Later, British scholar Jonathan Rabin would write that Ronnie's adolescent difficulties, sometimes marked by outbreaks of rage, were possibly the result of his battle to conceal bisexual tendencies. In short, the early chapters of the Kray's life reflected a blend of family tensions, a taste of rural escape, and the birth of hobbies that would later influence their notorious path into organized crime. The Kray twins were recruited into the British Army for national duty in 1952, but didn't last long, as they attempted to leave just a few minutes after arriving, with Ronnie punching and injuring a corporal who tried to intervene. The twins fled to their East End home, only to be arrested by police the next day and turned over to the army. Their disobedience persisted, however, and they assaulted a police officer who tried to detain them during an absence without leave, with this altercation sending them back to the Tower of London and then to Shepton Mallet Military Jail. Their aggressive behavior worsened when they realized that they were to be dishonorably discharged from the army. The twins wreaked havoc by defying authority, dousing a sergeant in the garbage, burning another guard with tea, and even organizing a brief escape from their cell. Once their brief military chapter was done, the Kray twins were transferred to a civilian prison, and it was during this period that Ronnie was identified by psychiatrists as being educationally subnormal, psychopathic, schizophrenic, and insane, according to Rabin. Ironically, despite their turbulent military careers, the twins embraced military structure in their lives, with Ronnie jokingly dubbing himself the Colonel. The end of their non-existent military career plus their criminal records also marked the end of their boxing career. However, it also marked the beginning of their deadly criminal enterprise. The 1950s was the time when the Kray brothers' criminal empire really began. One of their first steps was to form their legendary gang, aptly titled The Firm, which would serve as the cornerstone for their illegal activities. Operating under the banner of The Firm, their criminal expertise included armed robberies, arson, extortion rackets, physical assaults, and most heinous of all, murder. These illegal operations lasted nearly 2 decades, fully entangling the twins inside the criminal fabric of Britain. Their brother Charlie oversaw the activities with strategic brilliance, while the twins assumed the role of the gang's public face, providing a veneer of reputation while disguising their terrible crimes. One of their first ventures was the purchase of a rundown snooker club in Mile End, which functioned as the hub for their expanding protection rackets. Their engagement in different illegal activities grew over time, and by the end of the 1950s, they were involved with people like Jay Murray from Liverpool, participating in hijackings, armed robberies, and arson, expanding their empire to include new clubs and homes. In an unusual twist of fate, Ronnie was imprisoned for 18 months for operating a protection racket during this time. Their hands-on style frequently resulted in legal issues, as demonstrated by Ronnie's conviction for grievous bodily harm in the late 1950s. As the 1960s progressed, the twins relocated to the West End, where they took over Esmeralda's Barn, a gambling facility in Knightsbridge. The brothers blended themselves into the bustling, swinging London scene, embracing their newfound legitimate identities as wealthy nightclub operators who were self-made men coming from a poor background. Lords, MPs, and celebrities like Frank Sinatra, Judy Garland, and many more were part of their inner circle. With the appointment of a peer to their club's board, an image of respectability was intentionally cultivated. The Krays rose to celebrity status as the owners of Esmeralda's Barn, reveling in the company of the elite. They were notoriously strict in their demands for reverence, and anyone who ventured to challenge their authority was severely punished. Their financial network stretched through dog and horse tracks, as well as numerous enterprises, allowing for money laundering. This complicated web of criminality grabbed the attention of law authorities through the mid-1960s, leading to investigations into the involvement of several others. Ronnie Kray said this in his autobiography called My Story. "They were the best years of our lives. They called them the swinging 60s. The Beatles and the Rolling Stones were rulers of pop music. Carnaby Street ruled the fashion world, and me and my brother ruled London. We were fucking untouchable." The Kray brothers made contact with New York's Commission, the American Mafia's governing body. Their relationships extended to key personalities such as Meyer Lansky and Angelo Bruno, who sought to invest in London's entertainment establishments. The American Mafia had a tendency to exploit nightclubs and casinos to launder money, particularly abroad, to avoid severe audits. With Havana's businesses closed during the 1959 revolution, London's nightlife grabbed their interest. The Krays' ability to exercise power through extortion, particularly over figures like Boothby, made them appealing partners. Lansky and Bruno, seen as relatively polite among the American underground, were picked to handle this partnership with the erratic Krays. The fatal shooting of George Cornell, a rival Richardson gang member inside the Blind Beggar Bar in Whitechapel, was a watershed moment in the Kray brothers' lives. According to reports, Ronnie's actions were sparked by Cornell's disparaging statements about his sexual orientation during a fight between the Krays and the Richardsons at the Astor Club on Christmas Day 1965. Surprisingly, no one was immediately held responsible for the 1966 incident. However, despite their popularity and Robin Hood image, the Krays' illicit activities were increasingly difficult to conceal. Reggie allegedly planned the death of Jack the Hat McVitie on October 1967 with the help of Ronnie. McVitie, a subordinate member of the Kray gang, had failed to complete a contract to get rid of Leslie Payne. Reggie savagely murdered McVitie after tricking him into attending a phony party. This terrible act came at a critical juncture, as public fear rose that the twins might meet the same fate. Simultaneously, Detective Leonard Nipper Reed resumed his hunt for the Krays, breaking down previously unbroken boundaries of silence. Reed had gathered extensive evidence against the twins by the end of 1967. The final moment came on May 8, 1968, when the Krays and 15 others were caught, signaling the end of their once impenetrable supremacy. Ronnie died on March 17, 1995 at the age of 61 in Slow's Wexham Park Hospital of a heart attack suffered 2 days previously at Broadmoor Hospital. Reggie, who had been allowed temporary freedom, was handcuffed and attended his funeral. Reggie, who became a born-again Christian, died on October 1, 2000 at the age of 66 after being released from prison on compassionate grounds owing to terminal cancer. His dying days were spent in a Norwich hotel with his wife. 10 days later, he was buried alongside Ronnie in Chingford Mount Cemetery. Leaving a legacy of fear, bloodshed, and brutality, the Krays' notoriety lives on with an almost myth-like air associated with their memory. In reality, though, London breathed a sigh of relief when the Krays grew older and relinquished much of their deathly hold on the city.